Today's incident at SLS Custom Stainless is the latest in a growing number of serious welding accidents across the Hunter. Work cover has been called in to investigate. Early reports indicate the explosion occurred while a 23-year-old sheet metal worker and a 24-year-old trades assistant were welding a toolbox which had recently been cleaned with a degreaser. According to work cover, it's possible the fumes inside the toolbox could have ignited. Paramedics say the men suffered second-degree burns to between 10 and 15% of their body.
Both received burns to their face, chest and upper arms. They were treated on scene by ambulance officers.
The victims were then taken to a waiting Westpac rescue helicopter. One man was able to walk from the ambulance to the chopper, the other had to be carried in. The 23-year-old was airlifted by ambulance helicopter to Royal North Shore Hospital late this afternoon. Madeline Bond, NBN News. The blast was so powerful it destroyed this Aikido shopfront and shattered windows of several neighbouring properties. Bennett Street residents today surveyed the damage after they were woken by the explosion at around 2 o'clock this morning. Forensic officers were also on the scene, collecting chemical samples and trying to determine what kind of device was used and where the explosion originated.
And we won't know completely for a number of weeks until all those samples are analysed.
One possibility being explored is that the bomb was detonated from inside an auto bin. Police don't know whether the attack was targeted.
Well, at this stage there's nothing to suggest that, but it certainly would be a legitimate line of inquiry to pursue that angle.
Police are now looking to the public to help them solve the crime.
We are looking for witnesses. Anyone who does know something can contact Newcastle detectives.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Well, 3 holes in the ground to symbolise the start of work at Charlestown Square. Shopping centre owner General Property Trust enlisted the help of State Treasurer Michael Costa and Lake Macquarie Mayor Greg Piper to partly dig up the lawn today. There's much more useful work going on elsewhere on the site. The old Eastern car park has been demolished and the scrap has been carted away. And further south, earthworks are advanced on the new Charlestown Bowling Club site. GPT is moving the existing club to make more room for the centre. At $450 million, the redevelopment is at the heart of a new-look Charlestown. And it can't come fast enough for the council.
Lake Macquarie is the #1 council for development applications received and approved in a year, so I think that says something about what's actually happening in the city of Lake Macquarie at the moment.
Speaking at a business lunch today, Hunter developer Hilton Grujon says we need to develop more business and employment hubs.
We need more places where we can work and a bigger diversity of places where we can work. We shouldn't be looking at just restricting office type work to the CBD of Newcastle or to CBDs in fact, but look to be spreading them out more to where people are living.
And by the way, the lawn was fixed after the pollies dug it up. Paul Lobb, NBN News. Since Newcastle's Anzac Dawn service was relocated from Civic Park to Nobby's Beach 7 years ago, the number of people getting up early to pay tribute to our diggers has grown. Upwards of 5,000 people have attended in recent years, prompting organisers to rejig the event to accommodate more people.
In response to the increase in audience, we're changing the axis for the ceremony from east-west, where the audience looks straight out to sea, to north-south, and we're taking advantage of the topography and also using council's mobile stage, which will significantly increase the sight lines for people attending the service.
The sound of waves lapping on the shore and the rising of the sun are wonderful natural features of the service, but there'll be an extra innovation this year.
So we're having to use a tall naked flame to provide increased atmosphere around the cenotaph area, which potentially will be quite dramatic.
Next Friday's dawn service starts at 5 a.m. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Kurt Gidley is the first to admit that in seasons past, when the number 7 jumper was tossed your way, you hoped it went to the guy sitting next to you. Such was the pressure that came with filling in for Andrew Johns. His dominance was such that few ever felt comfortable stepping in. It's a different story these days as Newcastle sheds the one-man team tag.
What we've developed this year is a style that's not reliant on one player.
It's why Gidley isn't as phased about stepping into halfback this weekend, with the pressures of playmaking now shared.
I'm not locked into just ball playing, that sort of thing. I can still jump in a dummy half and have a run when I want, do a bit of ball playing or even off scrums, have a bit of a run myself.
Adam McDougall did that for most of today's training session before resting towards the end. While still showing some signs of discomfort from a knee problem, the former Origin player has been declared a starter in his first game since the opening round.
Unless he does what he did last week with a puffy knee at the end of the week, he'll be fine.
If Zeb Tayer's head injury that came from friendly fire today is any indication, the Knights are ready to mix it with the Roosters pack that's been setting the benchmark in 08. Even at work, netball is never far from Tiffany Lincoln's mind. After the Jaegers' demise in the creation of the new Trans-Tasman series, the Newcastle-raised 23-year-old was one of 2 who made the cut in the Sydney-based New South Wales team.
It's so wonderful, I love it. I've learnt so much from all the girls. They're all very encouraging and they're more than happy to teach us along the way, so it's excellent.
The only thing she needs to do now is see court time, which is a hard thing to do with a range of Australian players in front of her. And playing on her home court tomorrow against Kiwi team Waikato Bay of Plenty would be a great time to find some.
Playing in front of Newcastle was awesome with the Jaegers, so I'm really excited about coming back and playing with the Swiss, and hopefully I'll have a bigger cheer than everyone else, so yeah, it's good.
It was the New South Wales bodyboard titles at Nobby's Beach today, and the tricky swell made life tough. Led by Jimmy Lear, who got one of the highest wave scores of the day to win his heat, locals did well on day 1 of the New South Wales titles, with 5 through to the quarterfinals. The contest continues tomorrow with the seeded surface of the Pro Division hitting the water for the first time. 3 games tomorrow in Newcastle Rugby League action, with West hosting Wyong on Sunday. University must try and stop a rampant Merewether Carlton and Newcastle and Hunter rugby action tomorrow, while in NBN Football League, the Phoenix have the chance to stake an early claim on the title against favourites Broadmeadow.
Some mates like Greg Matthews, I've got Ricky Stewart coming, Peter Fitzsimons, I think Andrew Denton will be coming, Kerry Chikarovsky. We've got local guys, Mark Sargent's agreed to come along.
These guys make a living from scaring the living daylights out of others. Then again, it is called the Crusty Demons Unleash Hell Tour, and they have a devil of a time.
We're all adrenaline junkies and we love to do what we do.
So do crowds around the world. Scott Murray's just won international acclaim for his double backflip. But the American, like all riders on this tour, which hits Newcastle tomorrow afternoon, have learnt the hard way.
I've crashed, I've taken my share of blows, as with the rest of the guys. You know, everybody's landed on their head once or twice.
It's just a bug that gets you, and once you're better, you just got to get back on the bike.
Yes, it takes a special kind of someone to do this, but just try telling them.
Just a normal guy who can ride a bike.
Yet Aussie Matt Shoebring rides it well, and most of the time through the air. This is all warm-up for the Queenslander, but it almost didn't happen. If the wind speed reaches 20 knots, the show's over.
At the end of the day, it's up to the good Lord.
They'd want to hope he's a Crusty Demons fan. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
For 90 minutes, work on Newcastle's third coal terminal ground to a halt in what they call their war against climate change. Rising tide protesters demanded workers turn off machinery.
The 2020 summit is on today in Canberra, and we in some ways wanted to communicate to the leading thinkers of the community that coal exports is something that has to be addressed.
Whether or not that message gets through to the federal government, the publicity stunt certainly attracted police attention, with 16 people arrested and charged with trespassing.
I'm really proud to know them, and I'm really excited by what happened today.
A spokesperson for the Newcastle Coal Infrastructure Group said the protest put lives at risk, and police have also condemned the stunt.
Their behaviour really took quite a few resources off the road, police resources from Newcastle and Waratah for a period of about 6 hours.
The protesters will appear before Newcastle Local Court on May 13. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Ironically, it was the formation of the Trans-Tasman competition that cost the Hunter its top-grade side, the Jaegers, but fans still jumped at the chance to watch this match. It was an arm wrestle from the start, as both sides held the advantage, but neither could hold the lead for long. The physical style of the Kiwi teams has been evident in this new series, while Australian teams never back down. And what about captain Catherine Cox? She took the Swifts to the main break, up by 2. It's hard to stop shooting like this, but the home side put the foot down in the final term, taking the margin to as much as 5 at one stage. A magic fight back though from Waikato made it a grandstand finish. Sydney though holding them out to win by 3.
Most of these babies venture out of their garage just a couple of times each year, and only when the sun is shining. But at Maitland Park today, the rules took a back seat. Mother Nature sorted out the final rinse and the bold-coloured beauties shone their brightest. A short ride away, the streets were packed with young and old making the most of the amusements. The steam train rides were always popular, and with so many excursions booked out, Maitland Railway Station celebrated its 150 years in style. But Steamfest is all about, well, steam, and at the rally ground, tractors took a step back in time. The highlight event is the one they call the Great Race, when the 3830 does battle with the Tiger Moth. This year, the steam train proved to have enough puff, reaching speeds of 115 kilometres an hour to beat the plane from Sandgate to East Maitland. But a cloud still hangs over the future of the Heritage Festival, and organisers are calling on the city's pubs, restaurants and accommodation houses to get on board with funding.
We get good support from some of those, but not all of them. So, we need to... If we want the event to continue, those that benefit should help us.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
There's more stress on mortgages these days. The cost of fuel is going up. It's very hard to find cheap rental.
When you're down 12-0 after just 8 minutes, you need something to go your way, and Justin Peterson found just the thing for Wyong. No luck about Wes Tillett's reply. Just a combination of skill and bad defence, allowing West to take an 18-6 lead. The Rosellas playing the numbers game for their next, as they continue to build a solid margin. Chancing their arm before the break, the Roos kept themselves in it at half-time. Down on the board and down a man in Dean Amos early in the second half had Wyong ripe for the picking once more, with prop Wallen Shillings crossing. Rowan Kelly got one back for the visitors. But the Rosellas finished it off in style, quick hands finding Luke Karam, who in turn found the line as West finished 32-14 winners.
Professor Alison Jones spends her days teaching medical students, writing toxicology reports and assessing our risk of terrorism. As a security expert in London at the time of the July 2005 bombings, she raised her concerns over the weekend for our national security.
Nobody needs to be hugely scared or frightened, but I think we need to be prepared for that risk of terrorism.
It was just one of the big picture issues discussed, as well as many local ones.
I think there are big issues affecting people in the Hunter around health, around Aboriginal futures, around education, and also around security for us all as Australians.
But the work doesn't stop there. They'll continue to speak with the government until they release a final report detailing the outcomes of the summit.
This by no means is a process where we've hung up our coat and walked away. We've just rolled up our sleeves, and I think we're engaged for the foreseeable future.
Lucy Wilson, NBN News.
It's an issue that's close to their hearts and homes, but you get the feeling these people are fighting a losing battle. Having failed to commit to the F3 extension to Branxton during more than a decade in government, the coalition is now singing a different tune.
The money's available, the design has been done, most of the land has been acquired, the project should begin.
The Labor Party's track record is no better. During last year's election campaign, federal member for Hunter Joel Fitzgibbon made a verbal commitment to match the coalition's promise of almost $900 million. As the cost reportedly increases by more than $2 million a week, the procrastination continues.
The F3 link might be the answer, but at $1.7 billion, I think it's only responsible for us to rethink the approach and to ensure that both we get the solution and taxpayers get value for money.
Meanwhile, local politicians are being forced to consider contingency plans. Maitland Mayor Peter Blackmore says his council supports the link, but has to be realistic. These stakeholders were hoping the project would be factored into the federal government's budget in May, but time is running out.
We're trying to line up 4 ministers together, all senior ministers, and it's not an easy task, but I'm almost there.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It wouldn't be the first place you'd pitch a tent, but come July, a few thousand international visitors may do just that at New Lambton's Harker Oval. They'll be en route to Sydney for World Youth Day, but with more bodies than beds available, organisers are already preparing for the worst.
Look, if it rains, depending, obviously we don't want a June flood in July like we had last year, but we have been speaking with our emergency services. The council have been very supportive. We're very confident that we'll be able to keep them as safe and dry as possible.
Groups from as far as Africa, Europe and South America will arrive between the 3rd and 14th of July to take in the sights and do voluntary work within the community.
Things like tree planting at different city sites. There has been talk about going to places like the Sandgate Cemetery and being able to maintain that and beautify that to some degree. Some groups are going to Shortland Wetlands to do some work there.
Those able to host a visitor for a few nights can register with the Catholic Diocese of Maitland Newcastle. Lucy Wilson, NBN News.
You couldn't wipe the smile off the skipper's face today. Not that he needed it, he even had the backing of Sam Perrott, should he have found trouble for his tackle on the Roosters custodian.
When I saw the replay this morning, there was nothing in it, and I knew it wasn't intentional, it's just part of the game, you know.
Badiris now able to breathe easy and, more importantly, give his body a break.
Now you wake up today, I win and going into a bye, and also I'm needing the bye. The body's sort of starting to scream a bit.
His coach was doing that and more during a match that certainly had him on an emotional roller coaster. After a raft of errors, his half-time spray hit the mark.
It was really good. I can't praise the coach enough for that. That was really what we needed at the time, and he sensed it.
Yeah, he did. He sort of just cleared everyone out of there and just, you know, it was only left the 17 that were in there and said that you're the only ones that can do anything about it. So, it was up to us.
Bailey certainly added his weight to the cause with a 2-try effort that put Newcastle in front late in the game.
They were a little bit tired then, which probably helped me out a bit because I'm not that quick.
Richard Fayoso won't be going anywhere fast for the next 3 to 4 weeks after damaging ankle ligaments, while Adam McDougall requires medical scans on a leg problem this week. For the rest, it's about a week away from football, and for some, that's reward enough after a match that had just about everything, including that try to finish, which got a smile out of everybody. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
He can play as a right fullback or in the middle of the park. So, yeah, we're quite excited for the fact that he's very keen to come. Football's a business, and if a club came in and said, well, you know, here's X amount of dollars for Joel or X amount of dollars for Adam after April 30, then we look on it merit as we would do with any player.
It's the absence of scorch marks at 3 bomb sites in Newcastle, which has led police to believe the attacks are linked.
Each one of the explosions hasn't had any fire relation to the explosion, which is unique in itself. Most explosions, there's normally some sort of burn pattern. These ones could be considered a gas.
In March 2006, this 2-storey townhouse in Islington was targeted. 5 days later, a bomb went off at this family home in Cameron Park. Then last Friday, a martial arts business in Hamilton was bombed.
At this time, there's no motivation for why they've occurred.
Police say it's sheer luck no one was injured in the attacks, which all took place in the early hours of the morning. Sydney-based bomb technicians are now examining the device, which was planted in Hamilton last week. Over the past 12 months, crudely made bombs have also been detonated in the doorway of a beauty salon in Waratah and inside the Wentworth Hotel at Cessnock. Police say anyone caught making or detonating an explosive faces a lengthy jail sentence and steep fines.
They're extremely dangerous, and people that are involved in that sort of thing are risking their own lives.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Cessnock Council has been racked by a range of scandals over alleged impropriety with developers, the sacking of 2 senior directors, one who allegedly sexually harassed a young colleague, and heavy-handed tactics by council rangers. The ICAC has already asked questions, and now the local government department has launched a full investigation. It's a probe that the General Manager admits is needed.
Allegations have been raised on a number of matters. I would say the investigation will be a positive in that it can put those matters to bed once and for all, can clear the air, and then we as a council can move on.
The community in Cessnock are not happy with their council, and I think the community in Cessnock have developed, there's a mood for change.
Independent councillor Alison Davey says this is the most dysfunctional council in her 24 years' experience and could understand if it was sacked.
I hope it doesn't, but if it has to happen, it has to happen.
The investigation could take several months to complete. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
After years of crippling drought, the Hunters winemakers thought the wet start to the vintage was a godsend. But instead of too little too late, it became too much too soon. And this is what was left of the 2008 Shiraz crop.
In the end, the skins on the bunches, skins of the berries just collapsed. We would normally make 60,000 gallons of Hunter Shiraz. This year we picked 4,000, and 2,000 of that we probably shouldn't have.
Across the country, the crush is up on last year's drought and frost-affected vintage, but Hunter vineyards certainly aren't celebrating a bumper crop. It's estimated about 20% of the region's red varieties have been left on the vine.
The Hunter doesn't put substandard wines out, so if we know that it's not going to be up to grade, we'd rather leave it on the vine.
On the upside, winemakers are promising there will be a few stunners to come out of the unseasonably wet summer.
Excellent year for white wines, particularly Verdelho. We'll see some spectacular 2008 Verdelhos come out of the Hunter.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
It's recycling with a difference. Now in its 9th year, Waste as Art is attracting a record number of entries from across the Hunter. The range of materials is also on the rise.
Old machinery, bits of pianos, you name it. I mean, people have used it for their expression of their artwork.
I found a corrugated iron piece, stuck in the sand with all the fish around, and so this piece I call the artificial reef.
We used paper mache around the body, and that was out of a Milo tin. It's like basically just rubbish and stuff that we found.
While it's being transformed into art, it's staying out of landfills.
By using and reusing and recycling materials, there's a lot less water and energy used.
The exhibition begins on the 4th of June, entries close May 2nd. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It wasn't all that long ago Jared Mullen was one of these kids, hunting down favoured players for an autograph. Now one of the hunted, he was in the thick of things today at Maitland, and even provided an impromptu test on his injured calf.
It was just one of those things that just took a bit of time to heal, and it's healed now, so I'm ready to go.
That will be the weekend after next against the Titans, but with the recent good performances of Chris Bailey and the pending return of Scott Duro, just where remains to be seen as time runs out to impress for the Blues halfback spot.
6 or 7 doesn't really worry me, but State of Origin, obviously it's an advantage if I'm wearing the 7 for the night, so I haven't worn it all year, so mate, I'm not too worried about the Origin at the moment.
There isn't much that phases Danny Wicks either. King of the kids today, he wasn't buying into rooster prop Mark O'Mealy's description of him as a lair.
Nah, not really. Nah. No, I suppose you're only as good as your next games.
And that's the young prop's real focus, to build good performances back to back.
I want to find consistency and sort of be trying to do a couple of those a game would be all right, but it's probably what happens from here. It's a good thing.
As for Knights supporters, well, they can't get enough of him. Jim Callanan, NBN News. Just 8 days remain for Adam Griffiths to exercise a clause in his deal with the Newcastle Jets should he wish to move on, and the coach is counting every one of them. Confident the versatile defender will see out the second year of his deal at the Jets alongside brother Joel, Gary Van Egmond knows it's the pair's long-term future at the club, which remains the great unknown.
I know they want to experience the Asian Champions League, but also they'd like to, earn this sort of money which they feel merits their talent.
It's the catch-22 of professional sport, but one that may affect the club, which doesn't engage FFA-approved third-party sponsorships more than most.
It's not that we don't want them, it's the fact that can we afford them? And with success, that becomes a lot more difficult.
The coach has close to $500,000 to secure 2 attacking players, which have already been targeted in Europe. Along with a central defender, he wants the 3 critical positions finalised before pre-season training starts in early May.
Because we got a number of players late near the pre-season as the season started, I think it took a bit of time for the team to gel. I don't want that to happen.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
It was a win of sorts for the Dunbar and Roberts family today, with news that Winding Creek's crumbling embankment would finally be stabilised.
We've stepped in and provided $1.4 million as a state government to fix this once and for all.
Since the June storms, the family has watched the bank's constant erosion threaten their home and property.
Finally, 10 months in, government's going to fix the back. Yeehaw, that's good. But we've still got to face the insurance company.
The women say because no repair work has been undertaken on their home since it was severely damaged in June, it now floods every time it rains, and they believe their insurer couldn't care less.
Our insurance company have written to us and told us that it is a drainage problem, therefore it is not covered by insurance. So the house can't be put back together.
The company is also refusing to fix the family's pool, claiming it was built beyond the property's borders and therefore not included in the policy.
It's just another kick in the guts that, like us as a family, don't need.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It's a budget that has less tension in it from that regard, but nonetheless we've still got to cope with increasing costs of materials, and those materials, a lot of them increase at a rate faster and higher than what the rate cap provides.
G'day, my name is LAC Benedictine. I'm from Newcastle, New South Wales. I'd like to say a big thank you and hello to my grandma Edith Lawrence, friends and family around Newcastle, missing yous all.
Anzac Day to me makes me proud to be a member of the Defence Force, remembering those men and women that previously sacrificed themselves for our country.
I'd like to say a big g'day to my wife Karen and my three boys Matthew, William and Alexander. To me, Anzac Day is a time for us to remember those that have served before us and those that are serving now, and to remember the ultimate sacrifice of those that have been before us. I'd like to wish everybody a happy Anzac Day and see you soon.
I'd like to say g'day to all my mates back home, you know who you are, and to my family, Donna, Jada and Mackenzie. I miss yous a lot and hope to see you soon. And my family, okay? Hope to see you soon too as well. And all the young people back in Australia, get amongst the diggers, have a good day and have a frothy one for me. See you later.
Meantime, Hunter-based Defence Minister Joel Fitzgibbon is preparing for a key role in Friday's dawn service at Anzac Cove.
To represent the country and to deliver that keynote address in Gallipoli on Anzac Day is a great honour and a privilege, and obviously I'm looking forward to it very much.
He rarely misses these targets in flight. But Michael Diamond has been missing plenty of planes lately. The trap shooter was due to compete at the pre-Olympic test event in Beijing last week, but protests at the Chinese embassy one day and huge traffic delays on the F3 freeway the next denied him a valuable look at the Olympic venue. The seasoned professional doesn't seem fazed.
I fly into Beijing around about the 4th of August, so I've got 6 days of practice on the grounds before the Olympic Games start.
The 35-year-old will travel to international events in the US and Germany in the next month to try and maintain his current form.
My last event that I shot was at the last Olympic selections, which were held in Sydney, winning by 13 points overall, so I was very pleased with that.
Getting in some valuable training today, Diamond was also giving something back, mentoring emerging marksmen such as Michael Cole and Josh Player. With 20 successful years behind him, another gold in Beijing would put the proud Australian in exclusive company.
It'd be a great honour to have won my third Olympic gold medal, but however, if I don't, I certainly won't be disappointed. I'll be coming back for the ones after that.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
When it comes to historic homes, few come as jam-packed with memories as Pinehurst at East Maitland. The grand 1830s built manor and its leafy surrounds are up for sale for a lazy $1.25 million, and another few $100,000 will buy you the 700 or so collectibles inside, assembled by owner and interior designer Stephen Troy.
It's fairly tranquil and it's a romantic kind of place, I suppose.
Every room is packed with antiques, like a painting of English philanthropist Caroline Chisholm, who once lived there. There's a giant old birdcage.
They used the big ones in conservatories in fancy houses in the 19th century, but it's probably for canaries or finches.
2 French ice pails.
The ice pails are from Versailles, from the part of the main dinner service they had there.
And outside, a black boy like the one that once appeared in Maitland's main street. The contents will be auctioned at Elizabeth Street, East Maitland on Sunday.
It's the simple toss of a coin or 3 which evokes so much excitement each Anzac Day. But 2-up isn't always just fun and games, with tempers often flaring.
And 2-up is gambling, but even though it's fair and honest gambling, after a while and a few beers they become a bit raucous and argue about bets that are made or weren't made.
This year, licensed venues between Tea Gardens and Raymond Terrace will limit the hours the game is played.
By restricting the hours, we restrict the disputes.
And strict rules will apply.
Included in that is bad language and bad performances won't be tolerated.
Police are also targeting antisocial behaviour.
We have our licensing police working, our alcohol-related crime unit. We have Operation Vikings in full swing, and we'll be monitoring the situations throughout the day.
An identical Viking-style operation with extra police on duty is also running in Lake Macquarie, and driver behaviour will be closely watched throughout the region, with double demerit points now in force.
We've got Operation Go Slow On, which will be focusing on drink driving, speeding and seatbelts. The Highway Patrol are all out in full numbers.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
In today's weather, any shelter was good, but for these young cadets, a P-3 Orion long-range aircraft was a dream come true. Its high-tech cameras can read a car number plate from a few kilometres in the air, and its sensitive radar and sonar can find illegal fishing boats and hunt submarines. They're the types of jobs exciting these young recruits as part of their year-long familiarisation with the Air Force.
The gap year gives you a good option to see the jobs before you lock into a contract and stuff, so you get to have a look around first, and I want to make it a career.
Straight out of school, they're being paid $30,000 each to try the armed forces for a year. 450 cadets are part of the first intake of the scheme, 100 of those with the Air Force, the rest with the Army and Navy.
This is unique, this program, because they're on an operational base being exposed to real officers and airmen in the Air Force on a day-to-day basis, so they get a real feel for what life in the Air Force would be like.
Some were interested in the controls, others the bomb bay, where torpedoes and life rafts are launched. And it seems many are considering an armed forces career.
Everyone's really motivated towards it, so I think it's recruited a lot of people so far.
The Defence Department says the scheme will continue next year. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Australian children's waistlines are continuing to grow. The nation's problem with obesity is now so bad, according to the results of the Good for Kids, Good for Life program, 17% of preschool-aged children are overweight.
And why it's concerning is because overweight and obesity tracks into adulthood. So a child at the age of 2, if they're overweight or obese at that age, there's an 80% chance that they will be overweight or obese at 20.
Over the past 5 years, 700 Hunter parents have been surveyed about their children's eating and exercise habits. The results paint a less than healthy picture. Youngsters have too many artificially sweetened drinks, with 17% of children drinking more than 1 cup of soft drink per day and 20% drinking more than 1 glass of juice.
Sweetened drinks are related to weight gain in children, and there's also something of an issue as to whether it may be replacing milk.
The survey also found 50% of children aged between 2 and 5 spend more than 2 hours in front of the television every day.
So we'll need to do work getting the message out that more than 2 hours is too much television for young children.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
This trip represents the first big outing for the Matildas since last year's World Cup, and for their captain, the American campaign is personal.
After 17, 18 games and not having won a game and been there the whole way, it'll be a great achievement for me personally to come off with a win against the US before I retire at some point.
Perish the thought, but Australia's most capped footballer does welcome change, with FFA officials including 5 players who didn't feature in the World Cup squad.
Nothing stays the same for too long. There's always someone knocking at the door trying to take your position, and I think that's what you need to advance any sport, as more people competing for that one position.
People like Newcastle midfielder Amber Nielsen, who's among the Hunter players on tour. The Matildas will meet the United States twice, and the Aussies go into the matches buoyed by their performance in China at last year's World Cup. Success few thought was possible.
We go into games a little differently now. We have higher expectations, and that's on ourselves, and I guess the general public expect a little more out of us now.
There is work going on behind the scenes, and probably the biggest thing is other countries throughout the world now want to play us more often because we're a bigger threat.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News. Horses are Heath Ryan's life, and most of it so far has been spent on the back of one. So when horse flu hit, it brought his business to its knees, yet the Lochinvar-based equestrian still considers himself a lucky man. Unlike scores of his colleagues, his business is still going. He's also pressuring for a spot at the Beijing Games, but not as a coach, unlike the 3 Olympics he's already been to.
I'm over that. I'm not doing that. I'm going as a rider. But, if the horse gets injured or issues like that can cause us huge grief.
It certainly would be when you're restricted to just the one mount. A lack of finance and team policy mean Ryan and his wife, who's already overseas, can only use 1 horse each to qualify. And for Heath, he'll take Green Oaks Dundee to Germany next month for the final Aussie selection events.
And we got to win that. Yeah, we will. We got to do that. He's probably ranked number 1 horse in Australia. So that's really important that we get off that plane, that, we don't have any health issues.
Dundee will leave early with groom Alicia Hill Imagine, though, the trouble Heath could be in if husband and wife end up meeting in the dressage final.
Would it be Heath gold medal, Rozzy silver medal, or Rozzy gold medal, Heath silver medal?
You know, Rozzy's not about. Yeah, no, you know, that has to be me.
The chance would be a fine thing. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
It had been raining heavily all night, but the People's Parade emerged from the gloom armed with a sea of colourful brollies. They gathered in their thousands next to Nobby's Beach, and just before the ceremony began, Mother Nature tested their resolve with one almighty downpour. But in the Anzac spirit, they stuck it out. Led by the Air Force, veterans from a range of conflicts made the short march from Horseshoe Beach to the Cenotaph. For the first time, a large stage gave the crowd a view of those speaking, and 2 flames provided a warm glow, one in the park and one lit at Fort Scratchley. The Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress John and Kathy Tate led the wreath laying. It was an emotional service, today's military men and women clearly feeling an affinity with their forebears. Scratchley's gun fired 4 rounds, one for the Anzacs and one each for the Army, Navy and Air Force. It was a special day for Greg Williams, who took a moment overlooking the inhospitable ocean to remember his grandfather who served at Gallipoli and his father, a Second World War veteran.
I think that's what it's all about, you know, and I think feeling a part of it, try and put yourself in the position where those young men and women did for all those months during the war.
Because my pop and my great-granddad served in the war, and I wanted to come down and brave the rain and just do something to remember them by.
Just remembering my father went to war, and yes, always loved to come to the service.
Afterwards, there was a chance to warm up indoors with a hot breakfast and a schooner before the march through the city. Among the growing group of descendants, little Josh Ford from Edgeworth marching with his great Pops medals. And the RSL says it couldn't be happier with the new generation.
We're not going to be here forever, so they'll carry on our traditions, which is good.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Unless you're in Broken Hills Musicians Club or the 2UP School in Kalgoorlie, April 25th is the only day 2UP is legal in Australia, and don't we make the most of it?
Oh, it's a great game. I'm up about $10, so I'm stoked.
You know, I've seen some $100 notes getting handed out over there, so it's a little bit crazy.
I'm up 200. It's a good time. There's a good bunch of guys here. Everyone's relaxed, everybody's chilling.
But the game of heads and tails isn't for everyone.
I'm not a big bettor. I would never know how to do it.
The Cricketers' Arms was the venue of choice for punters in Newcastle, although many were left on the street, the hotel restricting numbers to just a few hundred to make crowd control easier.
They're hanging off the rafters, we're full, they're having a good time.
And punters could hedge their bets on more than just heads or tails, with Yabby races held for the first time. On loan from a farm at Bulladila, they're auctioned off to the highest bidder. After that, the rules are simple. The first set of nippers across the line is the winner. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
It's the second time in 12 months the Hopleys family home has been flooded.
About 6, 7, it just bucketed down, and our little electric pump couldn't cope with the water, and it was just coming through.
Water ran through every room in the house, leaving the Madawi family to face yet another clean-up.
If anyone says to me one more time, we need rain, we don't. We've had enough.
After almost 2 weeks of rain across the Hunter, dozens of roads were today closed, while waterlogged sporting fields and backyards became submerged. The rail line between Warrabrook and Sandgate went underwater, while in Dungog, the Williams River peaked at 7.6 metres at midday, flooding low-lying land. And with rain continuing to fall tonight, the situation will only worsen, especially around the Patterson River near Vasey.
The Bureau of Meteorology have just issued a warning for major flood of around 12.2 metres at Goswick.
A flash flood warning is also in place for the Mile River at Bulladila, and those living near the Patterson and Williams rivers are advised to move cattle to higher ground.
Patterson will become isolated, as will possibility of areas such as Bellevue near Wallalong and Phoenix Park.
Maitland is the fastest growing regional centre in New South Wales, yet has no rugby league representation in the Hunters' top flight competition, something the new CRL regional manager wants to rectify.
I've got a group of 6 or 7 guys that I want to sit down and have a yarn to about the issues of the past of Maitland, hopefully put those issues to bed and formulate something that they can move on with.
As for existing clubs, Curry cancelled its game against Wests because of wet weather, leaving players from both sides just one more round to press their claim for a rep jumper. Remaining games are set down for Sunday. It's also a rain-affected round in Newcastle and Hunter Rugby, with just 2 matches going ahead. With number 2 Sports Ground closed, Wanderers have moved their game to Carrington, while Nelson Bay will play in pink socks for its breast cancer fundraising day. Hawks half Paul Dan will still get a game though, called up to play for Country tomorrow, a team dominated by Hunter players against New South Wales Suburban in Sydney. And in NBN football, 2 matches have already been shelved because of the wet weather. All other games are subject to ground inspections. When Kurt Fernley says he's on the road, it really is the case. Between training and travelling, the 27-year-old is always going somewhere, and this weekend he's trading the leafy streets of Merriweather for suburban Seoul in South Korea.
I'm definitely in the best shape of my life. I've just got to get the results now to prove it.
He's already done so twice at the Seoul Marathon, even if last year's result was too close for comfort.
It took about an hour for the result to come down through photo finish, so I'm hoping that it's not as close this year. Hopefully I know exactly what I have to do.
The race should give Fernley the first real look at his competition leading up to Beijing, in particular those from the Asian countries.
Hopefully we might even see a couple of the Chinese competitors over there, which they've sort of kept themselves hidden up till now.
It's been the complete opposite for Kurt's camp, racing in almost every event there is. 2 weeks ago he finished a painful second in London, a marathon he's yet to win.
It was a bit disappointing London because he was in such great condition and he had the flat tyre and involved in a crash, so it was sort of a bit of a wasted opportunity.
It all adds to the mix though, driving a passion which keeps him going. His training partner Christy Dawes is also enjoying success in setting standards.
She came second in the Atlanta half marathon, which was a pretty good effort, and also in the 5,000 metres she broke the Australian record.